Welcome back to New Rockstars. We need to talk about the state of Marvel television. We are 1 week after the release of Captain America Brave New World, and we are on the eve of the release of Daredevil Born Again. And Captain America Brave New World has defined some expectations in terms of its box office, but Daredevil Born Again needs to prove a lot of haters wrong in terms of the future of Marvel TV on Disney+, especially after Deadline has reported that Marvel Studios is pausing development on things like Nova and Strange Academy and Terror Inc. Only one of those shows I knew was happening, but we're going to talk about it today on Marvel Sneak Peek. We're breaking down the state of Marvel television on Disney+, and I'm here with John Costa. Hello, John.
Hi, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing okay. If I sound weird, I have the worst toothache of my life right now. That's just been killing me all week. My body is shutting down.
I shouldn't have punched you on Monday.
Oh, that was you when I took that nap. I woke up with the biggest ouchie on the side of my mouth. But I'm making it through today. My body's like, you've been doing too much YouTubing, my friend. You got to take a break jabbering that jaw. But yeah, I think we're kind of in a state where we know things.
We know things,
and we want to share it with you without naming names and do kind of like a full pre-mortem. Not to say we're ever going to have to do a mortem or a post-mortem, but we want to just look at the state of like Marvel television and this whole experiment that Disney has embarked upon with Disney Plus, and just kind of share with you what we know.
I feel so blind right now. Usually we have like 4 years of upcoming Marvel projects on a timeline somewhere that we can talk about. But right now it feels like we've got maybe like 3-ish movies that we know are happening beyond this year. And that's it. So this is an exciting thing to talk about.
So yeah, let's talk about everything we know about these shows. What the hell happened with Nova, and if it's still happening or not happening, and what the future of Marvel on Disney Plus could look like. Because I think Daredevil Born Again is really going to be an important test. And that could really give us the future of what it could look like. And it could be a very good thing. Because Daredevil Born Again looks freaking awesome.
I hope so. And from all the things that we're going to get into some scoops or whatever we want to call them in a second. But I've heard personally from folks at Marvel that the reshoots did fix Daredevil Born Again. I had said on a Break Room episode a few weeks ago that like I was really worried about that show just because it seemed like it had gone through so many problems, but I've heard it's going to be good.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed that like they take those lessons and apply them to their television slate, going forward.
Yeah. I feel good about where things are at right now too. I'm a little dismayed at the state of the discourse about Marvel right now coming out of Brave New World, and a little, I gotta say, disappointed with some of our colleagues in the media. Not gonna name names because I ultimately respect the game and I respect all the players involved, but people are just so quick to on Captain America Brave New World, despite it being, in my opinion, of as good of quality as many titles that people gave 90% critic scores to in phases 1, 2, and 3. And I think it is as enjoyable, I think, for the average Marvel film goer as the first Captain America movie was, even though I think that was a better movie than Brave New World was. And people gave the first Thor movie in the 90% range. People gave Thor the Dark World a pretty good Rotten Tomato meter score. And now, like, these critics are just, like, acting like those movies were all part of a perfectly arranged plan. And I think, ultimately, those of us who had a more skeptical view of movie studios and remembered how bad things were in the aughts were like, no one knows what they were doing. And we viewed all the good Marvel movies in phases 1, 2, and 3 as miracles, which they were, and not part of some like perfectly executed plan, but just kind of happy accidents. And we were grateful the whole time.
Yeah, I think people look upon phase 3 and the success of all of those movies with some exceptions. You do have some sort of lower tier, maybe quality movies like the Marvels or Ant-Man and the Wasp in there, but they sort of put on rose-tinted glasses for phases 1 and 2 because of how successful phase 3 was in the build up to Infinity War and Endgame. And I think, obviously phases 4 and 5 have not been as successful as phases 1 and 2. But, like you said, I do think Brave New World is a better movie than Iron Man 2 and 3, or better than Thor: The Dark World and even the first Thor. I think I maybe enjoyed it more than the first Avenger. So you're right.
Wow.
I think that there is a little bit of that revisionist history kind of going on.
Yeah. And I get it. This is just what happens when you're talking about movies, is that those rose-tinted glasses become the only lenses we're capable of wearing. And the nostalgia does reframe our reality now. And so I can forgive that. What I can't forgive is just the obsession with plot holes now. And the overlooking of plot holes maybe 2 years ago, 4 years ago.
And this film doesn't have the advantage that those films have, where films that have come out after have filled in the plot holes a little bit, right? There's a bunch of movies, like people love Thor: The Dark World now because of Endgame, which I think is interesting. And kudos to Marvel for pulling that off, really going in and saying like, hey, actually the things that you maybe didn't love about this movie, there are some nuggets in here that we're going to pull out, and now you'll appreciate that film a little bit better. And I expect that will happen with this film, as this film did to the Eternals. Right. So, we're in the middle of a story. And I think the criticism for this film, to a degree, is warranted. It's not a perfect movie. But at the same time, there will be things that come after this film that make this film better, which I think is a really unique aspect of the MCU.
Yeah, I get the malaise. I get the fatigue, if we even want to call it that. I completely understand that. What I just ask everyone who follows these movies to do, in the press and in the fandom, do not compare the current state of Marvel to Phase 3 of Marvel. Compare it to what we had before Phase 1 of Marvel, which was some very weird Ghost Rider movies, some very weird Tim Story Fantastic Four movies, some very weird Daredevil and Elektra movies, and some very, very weird X-Men, Brett Ratner movies, X-Men Origins movies. Like, Marvel could have been that. And the MCU average quality, even in the worst MCU movie, I still prefer that to a directionless, odd, disconnected MCU or Marvel universe that was problematic in some of its humor, behind its times. I would even argue. I think some of the jokes in some of those movies, especially the Fantastic Four movies, were like, I don't even like using the word problematic. It was just like, do you even know what year you're in? It's 2007, and we're still doing Jessica Alba as naked jokes.
They're
like,
outdated.
Come on. Like, I don't care. I will criticize the hell out of those two movies because they were, despite what they did well, just dumb in a lot of ways. And I'm not even going to get to the Galactus of it all. I'm going to say just like the first two acts of both of those movies were dumb, and that's what I'm excited for. Fantastic Four First Steps, but it's also like, I'll take Quantumania over those movies, There's just so much to be excited about in the future of Marvel. We're going to touch on kind of what we know about all of that, specifically on the television side. Because Brad Winderbaum has sort of come out and given some of these interviews ahead of Daredevil Born Again coming out. And so there's been some interesting revelations about, how Marvel sees television and how Marvel sees Disney Plus and that product, whether it be live action or animation. Excited to kind of get into this stuff. I have a ton of questions about some things that have been said in this interview and what it means for the future of the sort of Disney Plus side of the MCU. So in just this week, Deadline reported that Marvel Television has paused development on Nova, on Strange Academy, and on Terror Inc. So we had heard about Nova. Brad Winderbaum has talked about Nova. Obviously, the story of Richard Rider and the collapsed Nova Corps after Xandar was sacked in Thanos' conquest of the Power Stone.
You and our colleague Brandon Davis did a whole break room episode.
We did.
On the upcoming, or what we thought was an upcoming Nova show.
Oh, and everyone just check in on Brandon. Make sure he's okay.
He's doing all right.
No one has been praying for this show more than he has. But Brad Winderbaum has actually talked about Nova and has talked about, he wanted it to be like Marvel's Star Trek in a way. Strange Academy was something that was only talked about by scoopers out there.
Yeah.
Marvel Studios has never acknowledged that Strange Academy was in the works, but this is going to be like a Wong series, where it's going to be Wong and Xochitl Gomez coming back as America Chavez, and it was just going to be kind of like a school of sorcerers where Wong is like training people in the art of sorcery, and you're going to bring in other sorcerer
Get Rentra
characters
in there or whatever.
Yeah,
Sure.
Rentra comes back. Maybe you have Nico Minoru could come back in there, and then Terror Inc. This
one came
first
out of
time.
nowhere.
We had no idea that they were even looking at this. They didn't have to say anything about this, but I guess there were some people attached. So Terror Inc. is kind of based on the 1992 run of comics, where Terror, aka Shrek, originally was the name of the character, is just kind of an anti-hero character who can absorb different powers based off of disembodied limbs.
I love this.
And other body parts,
You
and then
can
just
put
absorb
animal.
those
He
powers.
could take on animal limbs or
Yeah.
people limbs, and they continuously rot off of his body.
Super
Very
violent,
funny
and there's been
character.
a more recent, like 2008 version of the comics that where Robert Kirkman has been involved. So this is kind of like, I think, coming out of the same conversations that Marvel Zombies was attached to. We don't know if the show is going to be animated or live action. I assume this is going to be a live action show, and if so, I don't know how they would have even done this, because it would have been
Really
so
challenging.
violent and there would have been a lot of body horror and carnage that I just don't know how they would have pulled this off.
I'm sure Michael Giacchino is busy working on the score for Fantastic Four, but man, it would have been fun to have him be maybe directing the pilot or something like that
Yeah.
after doing Werewolf by Night. Come
Yeah.
in and do something like this.
So these three shows are not happening, it sounds like, or they're at least
Yeah.
pausing. Nova is the shocker to me.
In 2023, I had personally heard from someone at Marvel that Nova had gotten a, quote, big episode order. At the time, they were doing kind of 6-episode seasons and stuff like that. We knew probably at that point that Daredevil Born Again at that time was going to be an 18-episode season. Now it's sort of a 9-9 first 2 seasons. But yeah, that's something that I had personally heard, was that it got a big order way back then. It sounds like it's been stuck in kind of a development hell since then, and maybe they rescinded that order, and now it maybe is sort of shelved for now. But something that Brad had said a few months ago was I thought encouraging, which was essentially like, we are now going to be sort of operating like a normal television network where we're going to be developing shows. Some of them are not even going to go to pilot. Some of them are going to be piloted, but maybe won't go to series. So that sounds to me like maybe a little bit more expensive, but a healthier version of how to run a television studio, right? So maybe that's sort of what's going on with this show, and maybe all of them.
Yeah. So like, what is coming out from Marvel's
Great
slate on
question.
Disney Plus? So in addition to this latest Deadline report that Nova, Strange Academy, and Terror Inc. might not be moving forward, we more recently got an even more recent update from Entertainment Weekly, where they quoted Brad Winderbaum saying, "In conversation with Entertainment Weekly, we asked Winderbaum how Marvel thinks about limited versus linear series, using Agatha All Along running for Emmys in the main drama category as a reference. Quote, I think it's linear series potential," he says of Agatha All Along. "A show like Agatha, to me, is concept-based. Yes, a second season for sure is something that we would want to do, but let's not rush it. Let's get the right idea and then make it." And then he went on to say later in the article, "Hawkeye is another one that feels like you can make a second season of that show because it's Christmas, because it's Clint and Kate. You can kind of revisit it whenever, and we're looking for opportunities to do that. But as we develop things for the future, I think they're going to be designed to be multiple seasons, have more of a pattern, and be able to be released annually." So based off of that, it sounds like we may actually see second seasons of Agatha All Along and Hawkeye, that they're moving in this direction to have like second seasons of these popular shows rather than like a new 6-episode arc to kind of introduce a character and tell their origin story. Well, this year will actually be a pretty busy year from a lot of these shows that were just in production and development from previous years. So Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man just had its finale this week for its first season, and I believe it's coming back for a second season.
Right.
Daredevil Born Again is coming March 4th and will be 9 episodes and has already been greenlit for a second season that is shooting this year. Ironheart is finally coming out June of this year, and I think it will be 8 episodes, right? But this has been in production. Like, we saw a trailer for this like 3 years ago. So they've had this ready to release for quite some time.
That was a Comic-Con exclusive or something like that?
D23 in 2022.
Okay, yeah,
So
because
it
they
was
shot
forever
this
ago.
in conjunction or right after Wakanda Forever.
Yeah.
So it's been, that movie has been out for
Yeah.
2 years or something like that now. So
Yeah.
yeah, wow.
We also have Wonder Man is coming out in December of this year, 2025. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II is playing Simon Williams. And it's kind of like a Hollywood satire a bit, but there's a lot of questions we have about that show. And there will be a lot of animated titles that come out this year. So we're going to have Eyes of Wakanda coming out in August. We'll have Marvel Zombies coming out in October. And then I believe next year we'll probably have X-Men 97 Season 2. Will they call it X-Men 98?
That's a good question. I don't know.
I don't know. But that's, being worked on as well. And then we thought Nova was going to be coming out next year, but now it seems like all we have is Vision Quest as a 2026 release.
And I mean, potentially, another show that we're not aware of, right? Like these two shows that we were sort of like, we were vaguely aware of, but now they're shelved. Maybe there are 4 or 5 other projects at Disney that are now moving forward, and we just haven't heard about those yet. Who knows?
We have a lot of questions about Vision Quest's production timeline. We were trying to figure it out. It seems like they still have more of it to shoot. Vision Quest is, like they have said, will be the 3rd installment of the WandaVision trilogy. So WandaVision, Agatha, Vision Quest. What we know about Vision Quest is Terry Matalas is the showrunner, coming from Picard. Very, very talented writer. Originally, this is going to be Jack Schaefer's project, but then Jack Schaefer parted ways with the project, probably still going to be an executive producer, but it's going to be Terry's project. And it's going to be centered around like the White Vision we saw at the end of WandaVision. Ultron is coming back. James Spader's coming back for this series. And we just learned that a couple like random people are going to be involved with it. Raza is coming back.
That's right.
Farhan Tahir from the first
bizarre.
Iron Man movie. He is coming back in this. And then they just announced that Radir Malika is coming onto this show as a teenage character named Tucker. And many of us believe that this is Tommy.
Teen?
This is Teen. This is Tommy from Agatha. And we saw at the end of Agatha when Billy was reaching out into reality to try to figure out where his brother is, and some kid is getting bullied and drowned at a pool at some kind of summer camp scenario. We don't know, but we think this is who it is. This is his character, and he's going to be in this new Vision Quest show. So in terms of the production timeline, we've heard some mixed reports from our sources of whether the show has been wrapped or not. We believe this show, the scripts were written in spring of 2023, and maybe some finishing work might have been done in May of 2023. We don't really know. And we don't know where that work stopped because the writer's strike started at that point. But we believe that they are shooting this and they're finishing shooting it this year, and it will come out next year.
It's interesting, the timeline of things, right? Like there was clearly a work stoppage in 2023, but even scripts like Gladiator Part 2 that was submitted for Oscars had some dates in the script of revisions that were probably happening during the strike. So it's impossible to really know like what happened during that strike period, and who did what work during that time period. Can't say for certain that any of this stuff happened during the strikes, but we were trying to put together a timeline of when this show was written, and it seems like, that's sort of summer 2023 window is when some of the stuff was being finished. However, that's a long time ago. To be sitting on unproduced scripts is sort of rare. So like Eric said earlier, like we're trying to get our sources together and figure out exactly when that show was written, and potentially some stuff may have even been shot at that point. But it does sound for certain that writing for the show happened after the strike, at least in some capacity, and some shoots are going to happen this year, still yet to happen.
I think what is hardest for me to conceive of when we're looking at the future of Marvel TV is I don't know what these shows are. Like, I don't know. I know who Wonder Man is in the comics based off of the small footage we've seen of Yaya. I don't know what that show is. I don't know what Vision Quest is. Like, I know, some arcs of Vision in the comics, and I know where the character was left off in WandaVision. But, like, if you were just, like, pitch me that show, no one has given me that pitch yet. And I don't know what this story is. I don't know what the genre is. I don't know what the tone will be. And I just, so it's hard for me to just conceive of that as a show. Daredevil Born Again, now we know what it is. But when this was first pitched, we were kind of like, wait, but what is it? How connected is it to the Netflix world? And Marvel didn't even seem to know. And then they reshot it so that it's pretty much just a 4th season of the show. And we're all excited now. So like, yeah, these projects are coming out, and it's hard to pin our hopes and our expectations to it if we don't know what the show is.
Very interesting, because you have also, on the flip side, a show like Agatha All Along. A bunch of people were sort of like, well, who is this show for? Who's asking for this? Turns out, one of my favorite shows of last year.
Yeah.
Super fun ride. And, I, again, don't know how involved Jack Schaefer is going to be in this Vision Quest show, but if she laid the groundwork for this show and that work is being kind of carried through, I'm very excited. Yeah. I think Jack has done a great job with the 2 things that she's done for Marvel, and now people are saying that she should get a Scarlet Witch show and or movie, and I would love to see that movie happen. I think she'd be a great choice. So you're right. It's really hard to kind of nail this stuff down, because on the flip side, we've been hearing about Brave New World for what seems like forever. And that show or that movie had a hard time kind of piecing itself together.
Yeah. Like when these productions happen, we hear about it. Like it's really hard to hide production on a show. Yeah. Reshoots involve a lot of people, a lot of actors, crew people. You have to get.
I met a guy at a bar before Multiverse of Madness came out, and he just started talking to me about all the Multiverse of Madness reshoots, not having any clue what I did for a living, and was just spewing all this information. And I was like, "That's crazy that you're just saying this to random people you just met at a bar. Yeah. Your NDA is
unenforceable."
Yeah,
ultimately. But talking about the Agatha of it all, Patti LuPone has said that there's not going to be a 2nd season of Agatha. But I think that was just Patti speaking for Patti. I don't know if Jack Schaefer in the studio feel the same way. I think they're waiting to see. But we do know from, I believe it was Variety, partners with another data analytics company, that Agatha, shockingly, was watched way less than we thought. It was one of the lowest performing like major titles on Disney Plus. And it was just like surprising how little it was watched in 2024 based off of our numbers at New Rockstars. It seemed like a lot of people were talking about that show and watching it. So, but I think there is a lot of confidence in Jack Schaefer as a showrunner at Marvel Studios. That's kind of a rare thing, it sounds like, at Marvel Studios, for them to have like that much confidence in a head writer on a show. And it sounds like whatever Jack Schaefer wants to do, she could probably get a green light. But, Agatha will have some kind of future. Catherine Hahn has said that, like, she's not done playing that witch. So whether it's an Agatha or some other future title, I just think it is a character that Marvel Studios will keep in the TV side of things. From what I can tell, doesn't it seem like Kevin Feige is drawing a line that there are some characters who are TV characters and some characters who are movie characters? And so far it seems like Charlie Cox is the one person to cross that line.
Yeah,
and
maybe
then, of course,
the Marvels.
But after that, like, they've been very quiet about Monica Rambeau or Kamala Khan's future in the movies.
And I'd hope that, and maybe this is the right lesson. I was going to say, I hope that Marvel hasn't learned the wrong lesson from the Marvels, which is to say, like, oh, the TV characters don't translate to the big screen because maybe the audience isn't there. I don't know if that would be the case necessarily. But you're right. It does seem like Marvel is trying to make a distinction there. You're getting to a problem if you're Marvel Studios with the number of characters. Phase 4 and 5 specifically have introduced a ton of new characters, and they haven't all connected with people. And so bringing them into the sort of film side of things, I think is a unique challenge that Marvel Studios has to face. We know that there's going to be a ton of characters in something like Secret Wars. The question has to be, okay, how important do we see these characters and how much screen time do we give them in these movies? Because, Infinity War and Endgame specifically was like, oh, it's just the OG Avengers.
Yeah.
And we're not going to around with a bunch of these other characters that were not in phase 1.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are some characters like Korg who show up for a scene or whatever. But by and large, they decided to stick to that sort of main cast. Right now, we just watched a Captain America movie where the president asked Captain America to put the Avengers together. By the end of the movie, we're sort of like, okay, who are the new Avengers? There aren't any.
Yeah.
So Marvel Studios does sort of have an issue with what characters are going to be the people they want to throw up on the movie poster, right?
Yeah, I think what they're also running into is like they're kind of, having to prove that they sort of know what they're doing and acknowledge that TV has to be different from films and in terms of the narrative structure and the experience from the viewer. And Brad Winderbaum has talked about making shows, like greenlighting shows for multiple seasons as opposed to doing 6 episodes of a miniseries and then it's done. And he said, this is really a question about Marvel television in general, but I think it's very important that we make shows that last for multiple seasons, that come out on an annual cadence, that people can rely on, that feel like holidays and an event when a new season comes out. And that is exactly the right thinking. I think Daredevil Born Again needs to have multiple seasons, not just these 2 seasons. Let's see if they can build this show as they're shooting the 2nd season in a way that can go a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th season as well. And if they can't do that, a spin-off, right? And so this is me arguing you need to have Jessica Jones and Luke Cage in the series. If you haven't gotten them in season 1, they need to be in season 2, and you need to have an opportunity to have a Heroes for Hire series with those guys. We need to build out this world so that like we can check in with these guys every year. And I think if you're shooting Daredevil Born Again season 2 right now, it needs to come out in 2026. Don't do this bullshit and release it in 2028. You got to get it out.
Which I hope and believe that's possible, right? If they really did retool a lot of Daredevil Born Again season 1 last summer, or would it have been 2 summers ago?
They shot most of it. They started shooting it in 2023. They retooled it in 2024.
Okay. So like, this is what I really love about the quote is that Brad is talking about annual releases. And when you're doing a show that has a budget of, however many millions of dollars per episode, that's a challenge, right? We've seen it with Game of Thrones. We're loving Severance right now. That show doesn't even have the budgets that these Marvel shows have.
Yeah.
They're taking a very long time, Invincible, to release their follow-up seasons, and people are checking out.
Yeah.
They're looking for new content.
Or they move on with their lives.
Right.
They become people who like find new things, or they have families and they can't stream shows as much as they do, or they have new friend groups that are about other things.
Absolutely. And I think Marvel Studios is lucky that Loki season 1 was as high quality as it was, because when you wait however many years to put out the 2nd season, it's hard for people to sit down again and enjoy it. And so if you're talking about season 2s of shows that were not as loved as Loki, like a She-Hulk or a Miss Marvel or something like that, shows that I really liked, but at this point, even Moon Knight, which, when that came out, I think Oscar Isaac was like season 2 selfie or whatever. Who knows if that's happening? Yeah. And I think that audiences are going to be like, okay, Moon Knight season 2, what even happened at the end of Moon Knight? I mean, obviously, there's some stuff that happens in the back of a cab or whatever that you pick up from that. But I think some audiences are going to feel left behind.
Yeah, I think you see this phenomenon, and think of other shows that came out like 20 years ago that you grew up with. Like when Lost came out every year, there were friends that I had, and that friend group just grew because like in between seasons, we'd have people catch up on all the episodes on Hulu or wherever they were at the time. And by the end of that season, we were all still in the same place of our lives. Think back on 2016, summer 2016, when Stranger Things came out, season 1. Are you still friends with all the people you were friends with talking about that show 9 years ago? I'm not. I have moved on in my life. Like I since then I found who is now my wife.
Yeah.
I have a family. I have basically a new job. Like I was just starting at New Rockstars back then. I'm not really doing all the improv teams I used to do back then or the sketch teams. Like my life has completely changed. So who am I watching Stranger Things with when it comes out this year? You guys at New Rockstars, and it'll be fun, but we don't have the same kind of like history with this series that my Lost friends did.
That's a great point. I skipped Stranger Things season 3 and only kind of got back into it when everyone was like, oh, season 4 is so much fun. And so, you're right. I didn't have anyone encouraging me to watch this show. If if a show comes out and I'm doing something else and no one is like, hey, you got to watch this thing, we got to talk about it. You're right. Maybe I'll get to it, but a lot of the times it's not going to happen. Rick and Morty hasn't been on for a very long time, and maybe it's just that show's at a maturity state at this point that I'm sort of like, I couldn't care less. But like when that show comes back, I don't know that I'm going to watch it.
Yeah. I think Game of Thrones had this happen in the middle of the series run, right? It was an every year thing. And like the people who I was watching it with, we would all tune in together every year. And then they took a year off. And just in that year off, I feel like some expectations started to set in, and I feel like a disconnect happened between the showrunners and the fan base. So the showrunners thought they could get away with some bullshit in the writing of those final 2 seasons that the fan base were like, what? No, Daenerys forgot? What? Like, I feel like you need to have that kind of discipline as a storyteller and that connection with your audience so that, like, you can stay with them. And I feel like that those disconnects happen.
And Benioff and Weiss is maybe a unique situation. I think a lot of this is on the studios not feeling comfortable to greenlight follow-up seasons before the actual show is out. I think HBO does this. I know we're just talking about Game of Thrones, but they do this, I think, very well, right? Like even before White Lotus season 3 premiered, season 4 is greenlit. We've seen the dailies come in. We like the show. We think it's going to connect with people. Go ahead, have your 4th season. And I would love to see Marvel Studios doing something similar to this. Wouldn't it have been great to have gotten season 2 of Loki a little bit sooner?
Sure.
Would it be fun? I don't know if it needs a season 3 at this point because of the storytelling, but like if a season 3 of Loki was coming out, I'd still be pretty excited.
Yeah. I actually have like a bargain I want to offer Marvel Studios, anybody who's watching. But first, I do want to get into what you and I know, just kind of a breakdown of the timeline. And this is stuff that you guys might have clued into as well. But we can now like confirm that the plan was not to release WandaVision first. We know this from San Diego Comic-Con 2019. They said that originally The Falcon and the Winter Soldier was going to be the first Marvel Disney Plus series, and it was going to come out in fall of 2020. COVID delayed everything, but specifically the reason why it didn't delay WandaVision and WandaVision could move up to January 2021 is because WandaVision was able to shoot all of it on a soundstage on a backlot, and a lot of it was done kind of without a lot of oversight by the Marvel Studios executives. And then once it became clear that they would not have a finished version of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier and they would have to reshoot a lot of that, and we think it's because they had a pandemic subplot in that show. And a lot of that was field shoots. It was outdoor locations with a lot of stunt work and crowds, and it's just harder to shoot that under COVID safety protocols. WandaVision, alternatively, was mostly wrapped. And they were editing this, and then you'll notice, like, remember WandaVision episode 5? Didn't it feel like the most like peak creative period of WandaVision, where it had the too many cooks ending, the argument of the yellow credits going up screen, and then freaking Evan Peters shows up, and we all think that this is our first X-Men crossover. And it felt like episode 5, episode 6 was like, whoa, this show, a lot of attention got on the show. And that was a good thing. And I think it's because Kevin Feige and Victoria Alonso and Mary Lavanos were not paying attention to what Matt Shackman and Jack Schaefer were doing.
It sounded like they were so honed in on Falcon and Winter Soldier. It was going to be the first Marvel show on Disney Plus, and the first Marvel Studios show, right?
Yeah.
Marvel Television had obviously produced all of the Netflix stuff, and other teams produced things on Freeform and other places, but this was like the focus for them was Falcon and Winter Soldier. We need to knock this out of the park. So WandaVision was able to kind of sneak in under the radar, it sounds like, from people we've talked to.
Yeah, and I think the studio, Disney and Marvel, were just so desperate to keep Disney Plus subscribers and to stay relevant during this COVID time that they're just like, release these first 3 episodes of WandaVision. They don't really make sense to a lot of viewers, but it's gonna work. And then you'll notice, like, starting with episode 7, 8, and 9 of WandaVision, that's where you see a lot of random, like, Hayward scenes, and we're in the sword camp a lot more, and it feels like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but not the good episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And it just feels like, this is studio heads being like, it has to make sense. And you can see there's some reshot portions of the WandaVision finale. That finale episode was just a little disappointing and to a lot of people. And so I think that's where Marvel got their hands on it. And every series, with the exception of Loki since then, has that kind of uncertainty coursing through it. Loki, I feel like, was a happy accident where at the same time that WandaVision was being shot, Loki, because it was a character that was considered dead and was just getting a new life in the multiverse and could kind of be this playful show, Michael Waldron hooked in with Kate Herron's creative energy and Kazra's production design and created something beautiful that could just be its own self-contained thing. And they were able to write this great dialogue for Jonathan Majors, who had been cast for Quantumania. He got in there, gave a hell of a performance as He Who Remains, and it just worked. And it all just worked. And then they went ahead with like the same team. But even then, Benson and Moorhead took over directing the show. Michael Waldron left to, he'd been rewriting Multiverse of Madness, was now writing an early draft of Secret Wars. And then Eric Martin stepped up to be the head writer, but he was very much plugged in with the writer's room of season 1 and could come up with something that really worked for season 2 as well. But all these other shows from Moon Knight, even like Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Ms. Marvel, She-Hulk, Secret Invasion, they all have some episodes that really felt like suffered from, this show had to be retooled behind the scene. The showrunner was given a lot of notes, and even the showrunners would come out and say, like, this episode was originally going to come out, later in the season. We decided to move it up. Every show kind of went through that creative retooling, and we could see it on screen, even without knowing, until after the show had come out, what had been retooled. And then it got to the point with Secret Invasion where it just like made no sense. Like the logic of that show was just all over the place, and it was a very huge disappointment. So I think that's been kind of like what's been going on. It's because Marvel Studios is a film studio, and they don't really know what they're doing. It's not like they knew what they were doing with WandaVision. They've never really known what they're doing. They were under these huge orders from Bob Chapek to just release streaming content. And, they've lucked into some success. And I don't want to use this as like a Marvel hate, conversation. No one in Hollywood knows what they're doing. No network, no movie studio knows what they're doing. The only people who know what they're doing are certain screenwriters, certain directors, and certain editors. And when they can all work together, it makes something great. But the people who are running the studios and networks don't know what they're doing.
And I think this is a fair thing to say, right? Marvel Studios has come out and sort of said like, yeah, we want to change the process of how we're making these television shows. These 6-episode sort of like pseudo movie things are not working for us. And I think I'm hoping with Daredevil Born Again, that is sort of like going to be the first sort of seeds of that decision. But we're still going to have shows that come out this year like Ironheart that were developed and shot in the sort of like old way of Marvel Studios doing this. So, we're going to talk about a bunch of shows that we expect are coming out that maybe hopefully won't sort of fall under that umbrella. Wonder Man being one that I'm particularly excited about.
What I want us to do is that when there is like a slightly confusing episode of Wonder Man or Ironheart, we are not going to do this. We're not going to come out and say Marvel's dead or is Marvel dead. No, because it is not this show's fault. And we're not going to hang that over the neck of this one show, because this show is going to have some really cool in it. And we're going to celebrate that cool We're not going to be like, is it dead? Because I'm so tired of that conversation of, is Marvel dead? No, it's not. It's making money. It's doing fine.
I also would argue, while it's not our responsibility to have perfectly positive conversations about all of these shows and movies, it does do a disservice to the future creators of the MCU.
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds spoke a little bit on this going into Deadpool and Wolverine. There is a weight now that these creative people are going to have. The Russo brothers should feel like absolute celebrities walking in to direct Doomsday and Secret Wars. I don't know. I can't speak for them personally, but like, can you imagine if it is now your job to save the MCU?
Yeah.
That is like a weight that I don't think any of these creative people need on their shoulders.
Right.
Where realistically, the weight that I want them to have is like, how can I tell the best story possible?
Yeah. And,
full stop.
And I think narrowing their narrative priorities is like what needs to happen. So right now, assuming Daredevil Born Again works, I'm okay with, here's the bargain I talked about. Just identify the titles that worked, were across the board hits, and showrunners that you like to work with. Creative teams that don't give you any creative headaches. And it sounds like Jack Schaefer represents one corner of that. Benson and Moorhead, who are now show running Daredevil Born Again, represent another part of that. And then you could have, like, if you like some of the team from Loki, you have in that a supernatural, charmed Buffy corner of your universe. You have a kind of legal procedural vigilante show, stunt forward corner of your universe. And then you have a high concept, like, cosmic workplace corner of your universe that could both hit things like Doctor Who, but also Severance, but also a procedural, a Rick and Morty type vibe. Just announce new seasons and spinoffs from those.
Yeah.
And that's all we need. Like, I don't need season 2 of Hawkeye. I don't need a Kate Bishop Hawkeye show. Or I don't need a Moon Knight season 2. Like, those shows are great, and we can rewatch them when we're ready for it. But like, not everything on Disney Plus needs a second season and a spinoff. Just identify the mega popular ones, and that's all Marvel TV needs to do for now. And then you can explore other ways to tell other stories through films, through spotlights, through special presentations. But announce multiple seasons of these shows that we can come back to, and shows that we want to like hang out with every week.
I think that obviously it's very rare that a show gets like 2 seasons ordered up front, right? It's usually like we shoot a pilot, then if we like the pilot, we're going to greenlight a season. If we like a season, we're going to greenlight a second season. Sometimes you'll greenlight 2 seasons, like The Bear just got renewed for seasons 3 and 4. We just saw season 3 last year. We're going to get season 4 this year. But it is rare to give a show 2 seasons up front. But I think if Marvel Studios has confidence in a creative team or a direction a show is going, that's going to give an opportunity for these showrunners to tell bigger, more creative stories. And I wouldn't mind seeing that. I think Marvel's fear is that they, have a show come out, it ends on a cliffhanger, but the audience is not there, something like The Acolyte. And then, the MCU is this like crazy interwoven story. And now if you have like an unfinished cliffhanger, what do you do with that? They're maybe a little bit less afraid of doing that with post-credit scenes. Obviously, we've seen some characters in post-credit scenes that haven't come back. But if I were Marvel Studios, that would be my hesitation to greenlight multiple seasons. They've done it on the animation side with X-Men 97 and Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. But I think that they're maybe a little hesitant to give shows or give showrunners like hey, you don't need to wrap this show up by the end because we might look to a second season. But I'm hoping that changes.
Yeah. I just don't need quantity.
No.
And this may be like an argument against like New Rockstars' business model of covering everything Marvel, but it's just like I'd rather have like one great series from Marvel every year than 3 okay series that try to do a lot for a lot of people.
If you're talking about like both Secret Invasion and Echo, right? Let's just say Marvel's probably 2 least successful shows. If you took one of those away and made one of them better, I'd take that every week.
Which
right?
one would you take to give to the other one?
I think the story of Secret Invasion has more interest, right? If they could have gotten that story right, I would have preferred that. But I prefer the characters and the actual show of Echo that we got.
Yeah.
So it's a really hard decision to make. Like, I think if Echo were 10% better, it's a good show. If Secret Invasion were 10% better, it's not.
Still not good. Yeah, I don't know if Secret Invasion could have worked as like a Disney Plus series. I think it's like it needs to be an Avenger story.
It's an event.
Yeah, it needs to be a crossover event. And you need to like put the kind of budget in it that you put into Age of Ultron to make Secret Invasion work. And I just don't know if people are that excited about Skrull shapeshifters seeing it in kind of a cinematic world. But if they're not, they're also not going to be excited for it in like a Disney Plus show.
You're right. Because the best part about Secret Invasion is the thing that I didn't realize is happening.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen in Secret Invasion.
No.
Really.
No, the closest we get is like Everett Ross being turned back into a Skrull in the opening episode, Rhodey being revealed as a Skrull, but even then, it doesn't hit that hard.
No.
Yeah, so I think what it is like, I just don't. I think Marvel is kind of going through still some of these growing pains, and they're realizing they can't like tell every story they want to tell. So just like tell a small number of stories very well, like and then point people to the comics. Do animated shows, and it sounds like Brad Winderbaum is trying to do more animation. I just don't know if that's a good business model. The question is like, can Disney Plus live off of this? Is Disney Plus headed for a future where they just merge with Hulu? Because what I would love is if like Disney and Marvel could give some of their budget to the people running Hulu and the people running FX, because everything coming out of there has been wonderful.
We haven't talked about Legion. Bring Legion into the MCU.
Do a new season of Legion. Give Noah Hawley more money to make the shows he's making. The producers of The Bear, the producers of Paradise. Like, there's like very interesting stuff that's happening in other divisions of the company. And I think you can build a very successful streaming platform based off of those type of cool original series. But right now, I don't know if like the Marvel and Lucasfilm divisions are making enough quality shows for Disney Plus to sustain a subscriber count that's competitive with like Netflix.
Yeah, Disney Plus, what a wacky business model it must be, because on one hand, if you're a parent of young children, you have to have Disney Plus, right? It is a requirement.
Yeah.
Moana is the most streamed movie of all time, or whatever it is. But on the other hand, people like us are there for the originals. And so, if you're Disney Plus, who do you cater to? You have to cater to both. So they can't really rest on their catalog laurels. They have to be putting out shows like this. But that is what kills the streaming service, is spending all of the budget on all of these new originals. So I don't know. You're right. Focusing on animation might be the wrong business model for them, unless they feel like their catalog is so significant, because it truly is probably the best catalog of the major studios. Maybe you make an argument for
it used to be
Warner
Max,
Universal,
but Max has just sold off everything.
Yeah.
It is tough. Like I just don't see Disney Plus releasing Baby Reindeer or a Squid Game, or a Wednesday. Or a White Lotus, which I know is under HBO. It's like a different thing, but it's like you're just not going to see that. You don't see a Severance coming out of Disney Plus, but they need to if they're going to stay competitive. Hulu, yes. So there's going to have to be some kind of merging, I think, of some of these platforms. Just because they're all so expensive, and there's not enough coming out of one platform other than maybe Netflix to justify it. I mean, I would probably say Apple TV Plus might be the best bang for your buck overall, right?
Probably one of the more inexpensive subscriptions. You're right. I think Netflix just raised their price on me, and why am I there? Yeah. What am I? We're going to talk about what we're watching, and I do have a Netflix show on what we're watching, so maybe I should take that back. But it is fewer and fewer pieces of Netflix content that I'm getting into, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so ultimately, like, final word on the state of Marvel television right now. I think they are ultimately making good decisions, even if it means pulling the plug on some things some of us are excited for. If it means you're going to plug back in, doubling down on some promising IP.
No one wants a bad Nova show.
Yeah.
So if they are looking at those scripts and are like, hey, this isn't working for us, I'm happy that they're going to take a step back. I want that show so bad. And whatever happened on Xandar, very curious. But I don't want a bad version of that. So I'm happy with this decision, I suppose.
And just a personal plea from Eric at New Rockstars: set yourself up for some wonderful spinoffs. Whether it is a Heroes for Hire coming out of Daredevil Born Again. If you can't get a season 3 of Daredevil Born Again, there's a good Heroes for Hire story there. If you can't bring back Loki for a 3rd season, there's a good Agents of the TVA storyline that you can have out of there. Matthew McFadden is looking for work, and he would easily partner up with Clark Gregg and Owen Wilson to make a hell of a show there.
The Jonathan Majors of it all is too bad, because it would be so fun to have the procedural of we're hunting down a Kang every week. Would have been fun.
Oh, a different Kang, yeah.
Right.
I mean, if you're not comfortable with the casting there, you can just recast it and have Kang be played by a different person. You don't even need Kang to be part of that story. You can just be some kind of Doctor Who Quantum Leap-esque time procedural.
Yeah.
Coming up this week on New Rockstars, we have we're getting ready for Daredevil Born Again. So our Daredevil rewatch Road to Born Again series is coming to its close with our breakdown of season 3 from 2018 of the Daredevil series on Netflix. And it's going to be, I think, of all the seasons, maybe the most important to watch, just because like Poindexter's coming back.
Yeah.
You got Wilson Fisk and the way the show left him and Matt Murdock. It's going to be important to this series.
They're starting they have a new partner at their law firm.
Yeah.
For now.
Yep. But if you don't want to watch all those very long videos, you should, and you will at some point. We will have a shorter, just kind of a full recap of the timeline of where Matt Murdock has been over the course of those shows, and then since his appearances in MCU titles since then. There's just kind of going to be a lot to catch up on. So we're going to have like everything you need to know about Daredevil Born Again before you watch it. That's going to come out, I think, on the channel on Tuesday. We're going to continue our coverage of Severance, season 2, episode 7. Well, that'll be coming out at the end of this week. And then Jessica's breakdown of Invincible, season 3, episode 6, will be coming this week. And then any other big news we get. Hopefully, we'll be seeing a trailer for HBO's The Last of Us.
Ooh, we got a release date.
Yeah, and then if you really loved our Agatha couch reactions that we did on the night those episodes came out, we're going to be doing more of those this year on New Rockstars, and we're going to be reacting to episodes of Daredevil that way and reacting to episodes of The Last of Us that way. So, yeah. There's going to be a fun year of New Rockstars. All right, so let's move on to our final segment of What We're Watching.
Is there a bit we're supposed to do? I'm new to
I
this
was
show.
going to spin, but I'm afraid to not.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Eric, this is very exciting because I will take all of the credit, and maybe it's not my fault, for getting you into Survivor. Survivor comes back this Wednesday on CBS.
Didn't we just end a season?
We ended a season in November, December, something like that.
I was trying to get ahead before a new season came out.
New season
There's
is
no
out on
way.
Wednesday.
There's no
That's
way.
okay. They don't, it's not a returnee season, Eric. You can watch, you can watch this one, and I hope you do so that we can talk about it in the office. That's very
I won't
exciting.
be able to watch. I'm only on season 19. I still have like 20
You and Kelly
more
just
seasons.
need to lock yourselves into
We
your TV
have
room over
we
this
have
weekend.
neglected watching other movies and shows just to try to catch up on Survivor, and it's just taking so long.
So excited for that to come back. I've also been watching with a friend Love Is Blind, which is like so trashy. This is when we talk about all the reality TV shows that we're watching,
pretty
right?
much.
Okay, good. Everyone on there is a terrible person, and that's why I love it so much.
Oh, wow.
They're all boys. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can say that.
Okay.
Now, Kelly and I do watch Love Is Blind normally. What's more important to keep watching Survivor? We're almost done with season 19, which is I don't even know where it is. It's Samoa.
Oh, okay.
Pretty good season. A lot of crazy characters. Oh, the Russell. We're with the first Russell season.
So you have Heroes versus Villains next?
Yeah, I got Heroes versus
You've got to
Villains
watch
next.
Heroes versus Villains.
Okay.
Love Is Blind.
So I have heard stories about Heroes versus Villains and how it's the best season of Survivor.
It probably is.
Season 20. So I'm just like excited to get there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I'll
Totally.
wait. I'll wait.
Totally.
I've now when I first saw Russell come on screen
so
and he empties
excited.
people's canteens, I was
my
like,
God.
I hope this guy gets voted out immediately. And then I
best.
realized he is the Russell I've heard legends about. I'm like, oh no, we're gonna be living with Russell for a long time.
Okay, so they shoot these seasons back to back, right?
Okay.
And the best part about Heroes versus Villains is that Russell was on the season that they shot right before Heroes versus Villains, and because they shoot them back to back, his season had not aired yet. So all of the people
None of
on
them
Heroes
knew?
versus Villains do not know who he is.
Oh!
It's so good.
I'm so excited.
And they're like, this guy. Where did he come from? They all, they don't like fear him because they've never seen his show or his season. It's remarkable television.
Oh my God.
It's so good.
Okay, so when they did All Stars 1 in that was season 8, Rupert came back, and everyone knew Rupert. So had that
I don't
show
know.
come
Yeah,
out,
maybe
like
they
the first few episodes had come out,
or maybe the cadence was a little different where. They shoot them back to back, so maybe he had shot the second part of their year.
Okay.
And then, whatever.
Okay.
So I'm not totally sure about that. But yes, and you'll see basically Rupert show up on the island as like the most gaunt person.
Oh, wow.
Because, he made it far in season 19 and then immediately has to like go do.
Oh, you mean Russell? Russell.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah,
I said
because
Rupert.
Russell's, yeah.
Russell like loses all this weight in season 19 and then immediately starts season 20.
I'm so excited. Okay.
Really
I'm
good.
super pumped. I think you and I just need to have like a Survivor podcast.
Ooh, I'm in.
Through the New Rockstars Network. I don't know if we can do it. We'll have to figure out something.
Rob Castronano, or whatever your last name is that I just mispronounced. Have us on the show.
Called?
Rob has a podcast.
Rob has a podcast.
Have us on.
I'd love to talk to him. The thing I'm watching is I tried this new show Paradise.
Yeah.
It's on Hulu. It's like it's a Hulu show, and I love the concept. I regret to inform you that I'm giving up on it.
Oh no.
What
is the concept?
It's almost kind of a spoiler to say, but it's like kind of a high concept political thriller that has just like some bigger world concepts. And I don't want to say more because the pilot and the promos for the show don't spoil it until like the end of the pilot. So I don't even want to say. The only reason I knew is I have a friend who worked on it who totally violated her NDA and didn't say what what she was telling me was like a spoiler. She goes, "Yeah, it's like this type of show," and I'm like, "I'm not seeing that in the promos." And then as I'm watching, I'm like, "Wait a minute, I know what this all is."
Without knowing what you're talking about, this reminds me of the end of that Apple TV Plus show Sugar, where it's like Colin Farrell in like old Hollywood, and then at the end he like gives himself an injection, and this is the end of the finale. He turns into an alien.
Oh, whoa.
And you're like, that came out of nowhere.
That is wild. End of the finale. Wow.
At the end of the finale.
This is by the end of the pilot, you know what's going on. The reason I am not getting into it, and I'm sorry, a lot of you guys have been asking me to break it down. We're not going to break it down, and it's because it is not a great show. Severance is a great show. It's just, be honest with yourself. The fourth and fifth build characters on this show are just not that great of actors, and the writing for those scenes are not good. It's not good. It's like watching Homeland, and then there's the scenes with the kids. And I know Timothée Chalamet was one of those kids in one of the seasons, but it's just like you get to these shows and you realize, the people writing for the show don't know how to write for kids. And
ice cream, please.
It's just like, it's not great. It's like a B+ show, and the concept is really cool, but it's just like every scene of Severance has a fascinating writing to it. There's no fluff. And and you're gonna say, hey, you broke down X Star Wars show or X Marvel show. Yeah, because those are Star Wars and Marvel shows, and everyone watches them. Shows like Paradise, you have to have 100% in my tomato meter in my head to even consider breaking it down for New Rockstars. And if you show me 4 episodes in, there's like 3 or 4 badly written scenes in those episodes, then nope, sorry, we're not. It's not gonna have that kind of season 2 beloved appeal that shows like Severance and their second season's got. It has to just be better than that. And I'm sorry. And there's just like a lot of TV that's out there that's fine, but it's not great. And I think Paradise is a show that's like fine, but it's not great. Westworld season 1 is kind of like Severance quality. Westworld had, I think, a flawlessly written first season.
Really good.
And then you saw what happened. Second season, not great. Stranger Things, I believe, first season, flawlessly written first season, and then seasons after that, not as great, but at least that first season was like perfect. And you have to have a perfect first season. You cannot lose me 3 episodes in with just like a couple scenes back to back that are just like, all right. No, you don't really know what you're doing. You have a great concept, but you're not like that great. So that's why we're not breaking down Paradise. I'll keep watching it, maybe, if I get around to it, but I'd rather watch Heroes vs. Villains Survivor.
You should. Absolutely. That poor person that you just spoke about who told you all the details about this show is going to watch this episode and understand that she's not good at writing for children.
Oh, she didn't write on it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, everything's fine now. Everything's fine.
I wouldn't be saying this is
I
someone
was like, damn.
She acted on the show. I'm sure she did a great job acting on it, but no, yeah. It's not her that I'm talking about. Her episode hasn't come up yet, so I don't know.
And you're not going to ever see it. So
yeah, probably not.
Bummer.
But yeah, please keep requesting me to break down shows. You never know. It
is important because we do understand if an audience is there based on your guys' requests a lot of the time. Sometimes we can't get to them, but we do kind of try to listen as much as we can.
If a show is in a major IP like Marvel, DC, Star Wars, The Boys, Game of Thrones, there is a wide enough audience for just that franchise, that we'll probably break down something even if the show that they release under that franchise is just like so-so. If it's like, if it's fine, we'll still break it down because the audience is still there for it. But shows that are just like original concepts that don't really have people who know what it is, but it's like Hulu is putting a lot of money into the funding of it, it's got to be great.
Yeah,
it's got to be perfect.
If you text a friend, "Hey, are you watching X?" and they say, "What show is that?" It's hard for us to break that down.
Yeah, even if it's got like a cool sci-fi concept or has got some cool lore that they're building out for it, it's got to be like a flawless show.
Yeah, like even it would be so fun to break down some of these Star Trek shows that are good. Not enough people are watching.
Yeah, and then when you guys ask, well, why not Star Wars? Why not Star Trek? Why not Walking Dead? It's like, yeah, those are big nerd franchises for sure. Their audiences aren't on YouTube. Mm-hmm. That's what it kind of comes down to. It's like, we're YouTubers. If we were podcasters or if we were bloggers or just people on other social platforms, yeah, we would talk about those shows, but just like Doctor Who fans, there's just not a critical mass of them who are on YouTube, Star Trek, and Walking Dead. There used to be with Walking Dead, but then the Walking Dead audience has just kind of moved on. There are some people who have stuck with that franchise, but they have to be a certain age group that are just like using the YouTube platform with a certain critical mass in order for us to like justify the business decision of covering it. So that's, I don't know, just kind of a shorthand of why we cover some things and not others. Well, John, this has been a great episode of Marvel.
Thank you for having me on. Love talking about this stuff.
I just love talking with you about anything.
Yeah, we should just record our office conversations.
We really should. Not all of them, but most of them would, I think, be great listens. Well, comment down below with your thoughts on the state of Marvel TV. Hey, you know what, guys? My toothache has kind of gone away.
Oh, great.
So something about just talking with you
that's so sweet.
has cured me. Follow John at where? Where do we follow?
You don't need to follow.
Okay, don't follow us.
Here.
Don't follow either of us on social media, but you do need to follow all New Rockstars accounts on social media and subscribe to all the New Rockstars Network channels. And please join us as a member by hitting that join button, and that gives you all kind of access to fun stuff. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.